Welcome everyone to Science You Had Me at Hello. My name is Melissa Rancourt, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's episode. I'm the founder and board president of Greenlight for Girls, and I'm also an educator, an entrepreneur, and an engineer. And today, when I think of all of the speakers that we have for you, in fact, the word that comes to mind is exploration. So this broadcast series is designed to help inspire the next generation in science. And how do we do that? By asking awe-inspiring individuals to share their stories. This broadcast is brought to you by Greenlight for Girls, an international organization that works around the world to create hands-on science learning for everyone, with particular focus to girls of all ages and backgrounds. And today, in fact, we have special partners joining us. This broadcast is a part of National Science Week ACT, and along with our partner of the National Science Week, but also with Girl Guides Australia, we welcome you. And we welcome everyone to our virtual audience in the studio today. In fact, we've got people from all over, with many people, of course, coming from different parts of Australia. And along with that, a shout out to the team that's behind the scenes, Indra and Alex from our home base here in Brussels, Michelle from Australia, and a number of other ambassadors that are on the line. It's wonderful to have you today. So today we're going to get a chance to bring forward amazing role models and listen to their story. And I'm going to invite them on the stage in a moment. And they're going to share that spark that inspired them in their STEM journey. And we're going to learn more about who they are and what they do. So get ready to take note and certainly to be inspired. And let's call them up onto the stage. So it's my pleasure to bring forward first, if I could ask Dr. Amrita Prasad to come to the stage. So meet your disruptive tech superstar. She's currently a disruptive tech delivery principal at Coles and at Lab 288, and who studied physics and optoelectronics. It's such a pleasure to have you here, Amrita. Thank you so much for joining us. And one thing I'll say also about Amrita is that throughout her career, she's found different ways to combine her love of science along with communication, business, and strategy. So I can't wait to learn more. You can tell us in a moment. But let's bring also to the stage our next speaker. So meet your coastal expert and science communicator, Dr. Jennie Mallela. She is one of Australia's superstars in STEM and works at the Australian National University. Welcome, Jennie. And one thing that I love, actually, Jennie, is as you describe yourself, is optimistic and curious, which you just fit right in with Greenlight for Girls. And we're going to learn in a moment on how she uses her studies of marine life and how she keeps the ocean healthy. And I know some of our participants already have some questions lined up for you. All right, next onto the stage, I'd like to bring inventor, musician, and expert on plasma physics, Dr. Christine Charles. She is currently working as the head of the Space Plasma Power and Propulsion Lab at the Australian National University. Welcome, Christine. And what I also love is, and you'll get a chance also when you get it to talk to everyone individually in their breakout rooms, one of her favorite pastimes is to surf. And one of the things that she's doing is she's doing research on using electricity to move satellites through space. So this is definitely going to bring some wonderful questions to light. Thank you so much. Next, if I could call upon Bianca Capra. So your superstar in aerothermodynamics. She's an aerospace engineer and senior lecturer working in the field of aerothermodynamics of high-speed flight, as well as also as one of Australia's superstars of STEM. So thank you, Bianca, for being here. And for Bianca, what I love is that you talk about how you teach people how to be engineers, problem solve, and work in teams. And one of the things that you're studying is how to figure out how we can safely fly super fast. So can't wait to learn more about that. And finally, our last speaker to bring onto the stage, Michelle Melbourne. She's your tech entrepreneur and software superstar, and you're really going to learn how in a moment. Thank you, Michelle, for being here. Curious and passionate, Shelley brought one of Australia's most successful global software companies and now advises others to create their own successful tech businesses, combining entrepreneurship, and STEM. We have to learn more. And one of the things that she's passionate about is helping the world to be a better place through the business and social impact of technology. Amazing lineup that we have. Now you see why the word exploration comes to mind. We're exploring from so many different avenues, and it's such a pleasure to bring all of you together for this very special week, the National Science Week in Australia. It's certainly one for Greenlight for Girls we always look forward to. We've been a part of in the past years, and this is another way to do it, which is amazing. So I'm going to dive in because I want to know what is that spark, that first thing, and that first thing or that moment of spark that said, this is what I want to do, or this is why I love doing what I do. That can come from a very long time ago, or it could be yesterday. That thing that inspires us comes anywhere along our lives to say, this is what I want to do going forward. But I'd love to learn about yours. So I'm going to turn to Amrita. Amrita, could you tell us what inspired you to do what you do?
Absolutely. Great to be here. Thank you so much, Melissa. Great to meet everyone who's on the broadcast. This is what inspired me to study physics. This is a thermos flask. And I was 12 in my physics class in India. A teacher taught us how a thermos keeps liquids warm or cold. And there's a little layer of vacuum between the outside and the inside. And that's pretty much how it works. It doesn't let the heat out and doesn't let the cool in. And I thought to myself, someone thought of doing something with vacuum. Vacuum is the very definition of nothing. And I said, I have to find out who these people are and I have to become one of them. So that's how my story started.
I love it. And I love it how it starts from something a practical something that you have in your hand or that you use. I think it also reminds us to not take for granted the things that are around us every day. We sometimes just kind of go, oh, when I have this. But this has been invented by someone, and it's been invented for something. And when we explore and get curious about an item or an object, as an idea, then who knows what we can explore from there, what we can be a part of, which in your case, I love how that inspired you going forward. Thank you so much for sharing that. Jennie, I'm going to turn to you. Spark, what did it? What was this is what I have to do?
I think for me, I was always curious about nature and the outdoors, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do until I was at university and I joined the university diving club. And I'm going to say this was in the UK, so it wasn't as glamorous as it sounds. And my first dive, it was Easter, so in the UK it's cold. There was ice on this frozen quarry, and we had to chip through the ice to do my first ever dive. And I did my first ever dive, and I came out blue, and I came out going, that was amazing. I loved it. And after that, I pretty much volunteered on a lot of different scuba diving, marine citizen science programs during my university years, and fell in love with scuba diving and the underwater realm, and decided I wanted to do marine biology and explore the ocean. So it was joining the university club for me.
I love it. Well, there's a few things, especially there, is that it's an important thing to note that spark can come at any time, right? So sometimes, especially growing up, we're like, when do I know what I'm going to do? And I'm certainly having that conversation with my daughter now, and she's 10, and she's already like, okay, here's all the things I don't like. Like she's trying to figure out what her future is, and I'm like, you're 10, like it's okay. So that spark can be in, when you get to university, for example. So I love that. The other thing is that what you describe is something that equally someone else who experienced the very same thing, and maybe you were with them that day, did that same thing, came up out of the water completely blue and said, that's it, I'm done. Like, nope. And for you, it did the complete opposite, which is like, let's do more, so that sense of exploration and adventure. I love that. Thank you so much. Christine, tell us, what was that spark that inspired you?
Oh, I was actually born, was born in France. So my inspiration moment was during the high school years. I just love holidays on the beach, and I was just rowing my little boat, and I just realized that I could see the little cottage, which was Marie Curie's cottage. So she got a little bit of money with her Nobel Prize, and she bought that, and I just realized that by pursuing a career in science, I could combine my interest in science, still being free to just move and do what I wanted and combine holiday and travel. And I thought, this is great. I'll be able to do exactly what I want and steer my boat, which will now become my life. And I thought, yeah, that's great. Freedom, fun. That's what I want to do. That's why I did that.
I love it also because it's the importance of who we aspire to be. And you hear somebody's story and or see someone's life in any capacity. And you're like, that could be me. And I love the fact that you had that thought and you still made it you still went forward versus I think that's one thing that's very important about what we're doing today and what we do in general on our own and also within the work that we do, and that is to inspire others to keep on going. Is that hearing someone's inspirational story, seeing what they've accomplished and not getting deterred along the way to say, and yes, and I will do it. This is it. So I love that. Thank you so much, Christine. Bianca, tell us, what's that moment of spark that may have happened to you?
I think it was a bit of a slow burn in a way, I guess. Science has always been in my blood. So I've always asked a lot of questions about why or how or why not, and how can we change. And I have early memories of going on my birthday to catch pufferfish and cane toads with my dad for science experiments, which were really fun. Followed always by going to the airport to watch the planes. So that's where my real passion was watching the aeroplanes, wondering how they fly, just in awe of aeroplanes. And to be honest, I originally wanted to be a pilot. And it really wasn't, I think that the moment I realized I wanted to become an aerospace engineer rather than a pilot was when I was doing my grade 9 maths assignment, which, let's just say it was a Tuesday night, not quite sure what night it was, but it was my grade 9 maths assignment. And we had to make a box where we couldn't use a fastener. So we had to use simple maths and geometry and folding paper to create a box that would contain a certain amount of weight. And I loved it. I loved maths anyway, but that task was really fascinating. And it was then that I realized that I could take my love for creating something and designing something and seeing how it works and changing something. And instead of being a pilot, I pivoted to become, follow my path of an aerospace engineer.
Oh, yeah. One thing I think that's great is that, we might have an idea for the future, but what ends up happening along the way is we go into various different paths along the way. And well, first of all, being a pilot is still available too. So who knows, tomorrow you might wake up and say, I want to be a pilot now. And that's always possible. But along the way, we find our path, and especially the things that inspire us. And what's great about the assignment that you mentioned, that hands-on element of like, let me put it into practice, this is, I think, what also inspires people to, in general, to understand what I'm studying. However, sometimes it seems like, why am I studying this? Whatever we're studying has practical need, has practical use. And it's not until we put our hands and try to create something that we really understand it. And for some, that one exercise can turn into, this is fun. This is something that I could do more with. And I love that example. Thank you so much for bringing that forward. And Shelley, please tell us, what's that spark to get you to where you are right now?
Well, like Jenny and Bianca and the other speakers, I'm intensely curious about everything. So a science degree was always in my future. So I had the great fortune to do a Bachelor of Science at the Australian National University. And I actually, when I was picking my actual subjects for that science degree, my dad said to me, hey, Shelley, and look, this is in 1986, right? So those of you who, were 14, 15, 16 or 17, just do the math on how long ago 1986 was. My dad said to me, hey, Shelley, you should do some computing subjects. They might come in handy one day. And I would never have picked that, if I hadn't had that kind of outside influence. Right. And it was a sliding doors moment for my whole life because I combined a science degree in psychology, computer science, and statistics. Back then, we jokingly called it rats, stats, and dats.
there were 3 of us doing that combination of subjects. And you know what? Like now, it's probably one of the most important and relevant combinations of things to study: people and technology and data.
And data. Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, how
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, exactly. And what foresight to have that at that moment, because you're right, now that's like the wonderful combination of so many things that we need in every single company, in every single role. It's the combination of those items that really help us to understand how to create solutions, you know, and how to take something forward. And I'd like to find out more too, because you know, going into computers at that time, and I can relate because my story started at a similar time. How was that in those first years? You know, what was that like, and how do you compare it to what you see now, especially since you have and recently, you know, an amazing company that you've created. So 20 years or so in between, you know, what was that like?
Yeah, incredible. So wind back the clock. My first computer science AO1 lecture, I walked into the room and thought I'd flown to the moon and arrived on the moon and back. It was like, wow, this is not what I was expecting. But you know what? The people in that room are my tribe. I had found my tribe. I really, you know, kind of related to the other people in the room that were drawn to this kind of computer science world. I would never have picked that, right, on my own if somebody hadn't have influenced me. And to this day, I'm really grateful because I figured out that I needed to learn kind of differently to the way the rest of those folks, mostly guys, learnt. Yeah, they were extension maths kind of, you know, computing, natural, gifted, knew exactly what they wanted to do. And I sat there going, wow, I really need to nail this. And so I figured out how to engage with a whole range of these people in my classes so that I could learn and understand. And I was different to them, and they needed me to be different to them. So it was a real epiphany for me that, you know, that if you like technology nerds or computer nerds, they're not nerds. They're just fabulously interesting and different people who are deep thinkers generally, and they need other people around them to light them up, to help their ideas come to life. And that's where my passion for business came to fruition, is that I needed to herd these nerds into a company to be absolutely brilliant and dynamic. And that's what I spent the next 20 years doing.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And especially to see that where that started from and where that ended up, and there's such a connection between everything. I also want to bring forward the idea of role models. You know, Christine mentioned one already, but it's just a general question for everyone before we get into our breakout rooms. When I say role models, particularly maybe even your field, or you know, Shelley mentioned her father along the way who helped to kind of steer her or give her that thought. For me, it was my mother. You know, I was reading a book at the age of 12, which was called Cheaper by the Dozen. And I kind of put it down and I said, oh, too bad that wasn't real. And she's like, no, that's a true story. It's written by one of the children. And then I said, oh, and I said, but the job. And she said, yeah, no, that's real. You could do that. And that's how I became an industrial engineer. So for everyone, is there someone that comes to mind? Is there someone that you looked forward to that was close or far away that kind of steered you and said, that's something I want to do, or someone I want to be like? Jenny, anyone who comes to mind?
I'll be honest, my mum and dad both worked, and they were both medical professionals, and they both just said to me, do what you enjoy and do something that you find worthwhile. And no one ever suggested to me that I couldn't be a scientist, actually. And whatever I enjoyed, they just supported me. So I never felt that I did have any limitations. It was pretty awesome.
Great. All right. How about Amrita? Anyone who comes to mind, role model?
Very similar story to Jenny, actually. From my grandparents, I would say I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. Both my grandfathers were scientists, and technologists. My grandmothers were more on the creative side, acting, drama. So I got a good mix of both of these sides. It was a foregone conclusion, not a foregone conclusion, but it was never a question of whether or not I could do science. It was a question of when and how you did it, So, and I think it was, and that helped a lot because it never created any barrier in your mind that this is something you want to do. And in fact, it propelled me to think about, okay, they studied technology and engineering at this time. My mother's father was a zoologist. And what is the cool new thing that's happening today that I can get my hands dirty with? I think that was always the question.
Oh, love that. It's a great question to lead you to different things. Bianca, anyone who comes to mind for a role model along the way?
I guess similar to Jenny as well. Probably immediately my parents. So they were always very encouraging. They were also both science trained. So very encouraging of science and asking questions. I'd say it was my dad, though, that put me on the path of being an engineer when he was watching me do my maths assignment and, saw how much I loved it. I think then he's like, oh, maybe you should sort of steer me towards engineering. And then outside of my family, I don't know if I really had obvious role models that I thought, this is a role model and this is the person inspiring me to become something. But I certainly had very pivotal teachers that helped me. So my grade 2 teacher was really pivotal. So he was the first teacher or the first person outside of my family that really celebrated in a way and encouraged my love for maths and problem solving and saw it very young. And he was a very good teacher that would reward that behavior and really encourage students to follow what they were good at, not only what they were good at, but what they really enjoyed as well. And then later I had that in my high school as well. So I had excellent maths and physics teachers who were just the most amazing women. And I just loved them. I just wanted to be like them. I just wanted to be really good at maths and physics. Yeah,
which was what I think, especially when it connects to us personally, when we see someone, especially if they're close, like a family member or the classroom, then it helps us to understand, and especially if you want to be, you see things in them that are qualities that you yourself want to have, then it helps to bring you along the way. And Christine, I know you mentioned Marie Curie. Is there anyone else that comes to mind for a role model?
Yeah, it's quite a few teachers, but there's one teacher in particular, I really liked him. He was a math teacher and he said, don't bother trying to remember the solution to a problem. You just have to remember the path to get there. And if you get really stuck, you just have to team up with other people who can show you the path, or you can work up the path together. And I thought that was cool. I don't need to, remember the solution. I need to just be able to think and navigate. And if I have other people to navigate the oceans with, it's even better. So I thought, yeah, that's great. I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. It's also more fun, right, to do that in groups, right? And Shelley, anyone that comes to mind for role models for you?
Yeah, well, I had an older brother who won the university medal for science, so he was a very good role model, I have to say, and still a role model to this day. He's a fabulous environmental biodiversity ecologist.
Oh, great! All right, thank you all for sharing that.
Fabulously interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love also that there's such a connection between what everyone is saying here, but we're also looking at it from different lenses because we all come into it with different backgrounds, and not just from a science side, but we grow up in different ways, but the things that we need to help guide us to get from step A to step B. And so message out to everyone as well, which is, if you haven't benefited yet from having someone close to you, or having a teacher that said, I see something in you, go forward, then find that person, because they are out there, but we need to search for them sometimes. So with that, I think it's a great opportunity, because I know that everyone online would love to dive more into some of your stories, into all of your stories. So what's going to happen next is that everyone who's here online will get a chance to go into a room to learn about your story. So once you get in, then you can you have one of our wonderful speakers who will tell you more about what they do and why. And we encourage everyone that when you get into your breakout room, this is your group, so you can turn on your video, you can ask questions, and you're going to be there for a little bit. just for about 10 minutes. So quick to learn. And then you're going to come back here to this main room. Now, how are we going to get there? We're going to travel. And that's something that I know we all want to do right now. So what I'd like to do is get comfortable in your chair. The team is behind the scenes to propel you from where you are now to all these different fields of exploration around us. So get ready to jump. And as soon as you see something on your screen, then press and go.
So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to take you on a really fast journey of what happened to me after I did my science degree. Okay? You good?
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
Here we go. Where is it? Let me just find it. Okay. So 20 years ago, I started this company called IntelliDocs. And essentially what it is a piece of software that helps large organizations to automate their business processes. So you think about all of the paperwork that you get, like think about all the paperwork your parents have to do for your school. You've got to fill in all these forms, and you've got to do the same thing time and time again. So we created a piece of software that helps large and complex organizations automate that. And we did that from Canberra. About 20 years ago, we started this business in a bedroom in the spare room of my parents' house. And the Star Wars theme comes from the context that this bedroom had Star Wars wallpaper in it, because it was my brother's old room and it was his favorite thing 30 years ago, right? So I felt like I was Princess Leia starting this business. I think it's kind of cute. And you know what? We started the business with absolutely nothing. We had nothing. We knew nothing about running a business. We didn't really know much about software except what we were learning as we went. And so we just started it with a lot of passion and a lot of self-belief that we really needed to nail this paperwork problem. So the idea was what mattered. And you know, the question or the conversation that we had just before we came into the breakout room, I was always really worried about the great volumes of paper that were being consumed by all this paperwork. You know, we were chopping down small forests every time we needed to fill in some paperwork, right? So I wanted to stop that. And the most important thing that I found in creating a successful technology company was not just about the technology, it was about the people who came and worked for our company, the team. And so my favorite saying along this business journey has been, teamwork makes the dream work. And I'm sure you see that at school. But when you finish school and you go off to go to university or to work, teamwork is really where you find your tribe, you find your people. It's really important. This is just a little insight into a day in the life in my office. We would have a monthly team meeting where we would celebrate the success of people in the team, their anniversaries where they've been with us, welcoming new people. And you can see there, Jason had a baby boy. So, you know, there's a lot of fun in a software technology company. But one of the really interesting things for me in hiring great people was we never hired anybody who was normal. So we like to hire people who are different. We like to hire people who thought outside the box, and we like to hire people that weren't like anybody else, because we could always get plenty of those kind of people who are like everybody else. So it's really important for you to realize that in your own journey in life, that you don't have to be like everybody else, okay? Because there's employers out there who are looking for people who aren't normal.
Normal is overrated.
Normal's so overrated, Annalise. And this is just a little example of not normal, right? These are two very special birds that are unique in the world. They're called the blue-footed booby bird. And they live in the Galapagos Islands, which is the coolest place on the planet that I went to last year. One of the other things that I really loved about running my own business was that it was really hard all the time. Nothing was ever easy. Everything seemed to go wrong and everything was hard, right? And to make it kind of better, to put yourself in a better place or a better state of mind, this was my favorite saying, that smooth waters don't make good sailors. So in tackling the hard homework and in trying to do your best all the time, it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to feel like you're out in the ocean on the big waves, being hammered by the wind and being battered by a storm. But honestly, it's pretty boring when you're in the safe harbor with no wind and no waves. You will soon become very uninterested in doing that kind of thing in your future. So always pick the kind of options that are going to challenge you and really make you think and work hard. And this is just a little bit of a word noodle that summed up my career and the kind of things that I could summarize in such a short time that we have together, just with the few of us, with a few minutes together. So hopefully it's a bit of a visual that sums up what I have loved to do with science and technology and people, always pushing the boundaries, always working hard, always opting for what we call the hard homework, because who wants to do things that are easy, honestly? And for us with our software, it was always about the success of our customer, so that we were really giving them something that they needed and that drove their business forward, being the best we could do. And if you can see down the bottom right-hand side of that word noodle, you can see the big word there that says fun. We always had fantastic time working together and inventing new ways, keeping up with technology, because technology changes all the time, right? The software is always offering you a new version to take. And so we're always learning what was in that new version, always learning about what was coming down the line, and using our new knowledge of that technology to help our customers solve their own problems. So hopefully that's been a little insight into my world. I studied computer science at university, but I also studied psychology. So, it's not all about the code, and it's a combination of the technology, learning and skills, and people. It really, really will help you stand out if you focus on the people and the technology, inventing, engineering, innovating. So has anybody got any questions? We've got about 20 seconds, or you can chat to me. Yeah, you can just send me a direct chat while we're still going for the next kind of bunch of minutes going forward. All right. Good luck with everything for all of you, and thanks very much for joining this breakout room. See ya.
Oh, awesome to see you. My name is Amrita. I introduced myself earlier a little bit, but I was told today that, I should share my story, right? And that got me thinking a little bit as to what makes a cool story. So a lot of what I'm going to share today is just my idea of what makes a cool story and how can we all get ours. So I just want to quickly share my screen. Please let me know if you can see it or if there are any problems. Is that visible? Awesome. So I work in the disruptive technology team. We call Lab 288 at Coles. And as I said, my main role today, I'm Melbourne based, and my main role in my day-to-day work is understanding, you as our customers coming into Coles, what new cool technologies can we look at and put in there so that you have a cool experience when you come into store. You can find the things you need easily and it's more comfortable for you. But really, what makes a cool story, right, that I'm supposed to tell you today? So maybe a cool story makes you explore. So it's just a guess. Maybe it takes you from the beaches of New Zealand to the sunny cities of Australia, to the foothills of the mountains in Austria, which is that picture on the right, to maybe the vineyards in Switzerland that are by the lake. That's a picture on the left, and where I was actually living till last year, till I moved back to Australia. Maybe a cool story also gets you to meet some interesting characters. So you could be sitting in a room full of Nobel Prize winners talking about light and celebrating International Year of Light at UNESCO in Paris. It's This is something you could be doing if you've got a cool story. You could be standing next to the Minister for Innovation in Belgium, who was a lady in 2014, by the way, very, very nice lady. Or you could be listening to a cool man over here play the laser harp. I honestly did not know that a laser harp was something that existed till I saw this person play it. So you get to meet some interesting characters as part of a cool story. Maybe you get to create something new. Maybe you get the opportunity, like me, to create an optics kit for secondary schools so that young students can work with science and optics and do experiments in their class. Or maybe you get to create a lens for a new kind of light. So when you put it in a room and you look directly into it, you will get no glare. You can look straight into it. And maybe as part of your cool story, somebody uses what you create. So you get the opportunity that, a little girl looks at what you made. She looks at an optical fiber and goes, that's cool, I can shine light through it. By the way, that's how the internet works. Or you see the lights that you helped make light up an office and a bunch of people working happily under the lights that you helped to create. And maybe because of your cool story and what you do, someone tells you that you made a difference in their life. A teacher tells you that you gave them materials and you helped them to teach science and technology better in their classrooms. You helped them to encourage their students. Or maybe you just helped a whole bunch of people have a cool party with the awesome lights that your company helped make, at this event. And they tell you they liked it. But I think most important thing, if you have a cool story, is that you learn some lessons along the way. So a big one, and I want to share mine, is that nobody learns to ride a bike by watching somebody else, right? You have to get on the bike. You may fall down a few times. You may not want to do it anymore, but you get back on it and you learn to ride and you do it yourself. And that's the same with science, with STEM, with anything we do. You have to do science with your own hands. You have to think about it with your own mind. And that's when you really understand the potential of what it can give you. So I just want to end this part of my talk by saying that STEM gave me my cool story. And I'm so happy to share it with all of you today. Please welcome any questions, anything else you might have to discuss with me, please. Any questions, comments? No? All good? Maybe I'll also add a couple of things just to add to that, right? As you can see, I studied physics and optics at university at ANU in Canberra. And that was 10 years ago already. And over the last 10 years, it's given me the opportunity to explore the world. It's given me the opportunity to meet so many people that I never thought I would in this field. And this is not just other scientists, but it's lighting designers. It is retail designers. It is actors. It is people that work in agriculture, people that work with animals in zoos. I never imagined that I would have the experience of meeting all of these different kinds of people, understanding some problems they may be having, and then using knowledge that I have to be able to solve those problems. So I think, and that is something that as a person studying STEM, as a person looking at technology, you have the opportunity. It just opens up the horizons completely, rather than, blocking you off to what anyone may think. I'm sure you all are part of this broadcast, so I'm sure none of you think that science is just for a bunch of geeks that like to talk about really difficult things that are boring. Not at all. Not anymore. You will. I like that, Brian. Is that how you say your name? You're like, no, that's not it. So yeah, absolutely. And I'm really happy that, and you know what? It helps you tell your story. Each and every one of you can be back here in a couple of years telling us your story, and that's what I'm looking forward to. Awesome. So I'm going to stop that share so we know what we're doing. And you enjoying the broadcast so far? The stories are so cool from everybody. Did I say that correctly? Rihan. Awesome. And the other thing I also want to say, and I'll probably get a chance to say it later as well again, is that one of the things that has helped me along this journey is not being afraid to just play to my strengths. So, understand what I enjoy, understand what I'm good at, and use that in my daily work and use that in my interactions with everybody else. So, and that has really helped me a lot. And also asking questions, not being afraid. I was not the most confident person starting off, but I've learned that you can ask questions and everyone is always happy to answer. That's cool. Yeah. So I think we have to now jump back into the original screen. So thank you all. I hope you enjoyed that. And just a message to maybe turn off the videos when we jump back into the other screen. Thank you so much. It's lovely. Thank you.
Now, within our ambassadors, we have so many passionate people as part of the G4G community, and now all of you too. But we have these ambassadors who we've met along the way at events at every age, and they are just like, I just want to do more. I just want to do more. So we think, you know what? Maybe you want to be a G4G ambassador. And they say, yes, tell me more. And it's someone who has so much passion and curiosity that they want to drive forward and do a number of things in their community. And so the ambassador that we have bringing by video today is Francesca. And Francesca is 13 years old, and she is inspired by science and the environment. And she's been to all of our G4G days in Canberra. And it's been such a pleasure to have her part of this. So with this, I think our team is ready to queue up, and I think she's got a question for one of you that will be for all of you too.
Hi, I'm Francesca and I'm from Canberra. I'm 13 years old and have been a part of all the previous Greenlight for Girls days in Canberra. Although I can't be with you today, I'm excited to ask a few questions because I am inspired by science and the environment. My first question is, what causes the most damage to the Great Barrier Reef, and does sunscreen play a role in this? My second question is, in your opinion, what is the most interesting recent discovery in the ocean? I can't wait to hear your answers.
Oh, such great. And Francesca, when you watch this video later, which I know you very, very much wanted to be with us today. So thank you for bringing in your video. And hey, Jenny, this has you written all over it. But I am going to extend this question to everyone in a bit. But Jenny, starting off, for what Francesca mentions, there anything that comes to mind that might help her with her curious questions?
So if I remember rightly, the first question was, what is the greatest threat to the Great Barrier Reef?
That's it, yeah.
Yes. So I think most of you will have seen in the news that we're having problems with coral reef bleaching. And this is basically when corals are exposed to really, really warm water for a long period of time. And because corals are part plant, part animal, and they can't leave the reef because they're actually glued to the bottom, the organisms basically suffer from heat stress. And when they get too hot, they lose their little symbiotic algae. So this is algae that they rely on for food and for energy. And the polyp animal actually expels the algae. And what that means is they slowly starve to death unless water conditions return to normal and they can have that algae return and live in their skin. So it's a little bit like if I were to put you in a sauna for an hour, you'd get hot, but it would be okay. If I left you in a sauna for a week, you would be in hospital or dead, basically. And that's what it does to a coral. And the reasons the oceans are warming are because carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. And we're making our planet warmer and warmer. So really what we need to do is limit our greenhouse emissions, in particular carbon dioxide, and to start using more renewable sources of energy to look after our oceans and our planets and reduce our CO2 emissions and try and control our climate temperature.
Yeah, it's great. And this is something that connects to all of our fields and all of us as individuals, as roles in the community. And when I say everyone, it's not just the speakers, it's everybody. The impact that we can have to do on a positive side for the climate change aspects and the environmental issues that we have around us. So, you know, I'll keep with you for a second, Jenny, and then we'll go on to everyone else. But as far as either an idea that comes to mind of what people can do, or have you seen any recent discoveries that can help with what's happening in the oceans? If either of those sparks an idea to share.
Sure. So I think we can all play a role in reducing CO2 emissions. And this is just from making smart energy choices. So it can include buying locally produced food that at your farmers markets, instead of buying those cherries that are out of season and have been flown in from the other side of the world. And that reduces our carbon footprint. Also, maybe wearing a jumper in winter instead of cranking up the heating an extra degree or two. Just maybe dressing a bit more sensibly. And for those of you who one day may buy your own houses, maybe insulating the house a little bit more. And I'm sure we have a lot of people here who already use public transport. Maybe having a little bit of a think and thinking, do I really need to hop in the car, or could I walk, bike, or take public transport? So there are some really easy steps we can take. A cool invention. Well, there are scientists at the moment who are looking at how we can help corals to adapt more rapidly. And that's using genetics. And it's not a solution. We can't modify every coral on the planet. But what we are looking at is possibly looking at ways to help small populations adapt more rapidly to climate change until we find a solution to climate change. So there are some very clever scientists out there looking to find short-term solutions until we solve the bigger problem of climate change.
Wonderful. And I'm going to take that question and pass it to everyone as well. And if we don't get a chance to get to everyone before we have to go into our next breakout room, then maybe this is something you can address in your room. But one is, in your field, in your experience, is there something that is connected to that, related to what we can do as citizens, as part of the community at any age, to positively impact our surrounding? And then also, you know, is there a recent discovery and invention that you are looking to, or that you see that could also be something in your field that's going to make a huge impact? So I throw this around. Maybe Bianca, if I can grab you first, if anything comes to mind.
Sure. Actually, just really recently, I think it was even yesterday, some aerospace companies have announced that they are investing and prototyping and testing green aviation fuel. So aviation, although it is a small, well, at the moment there is a big drop in their emissions, but their emissions normally account for around 2% of the world's emissions. But with the growth in aviation, that's obviously going to grow when everything else is reducing. So there is a lot of research happening to make green or greener fuel that has less emissions, is one thing that they're doing. And another really interesting part when you look at aviation is the rise and acceptance of electric powered turbine engines. So using electricity to power our aircraft instead of what we would use at the moment, which is burning fuel, which is really, really quite fascinating to know if that's going to, it's small aircraft, it would be okay, but for the bigger ones, obviously probably not enough power. But yeah, the aviation industry is definitely taking its corporate citizen role of creating, reducing greenhouse gases very seriously as well.
Absolutely, great. And I'll just one more, and then I think we need to go to our breakout room. Christine, is there anything that comes to mind in your field?
I was just thinking, we live in a little bit troubled times with the COVID, but the most interesting impact that everyone was aware of is that when all these planes were just stopped, then suddenly, you know, the air became much better, the imagery from the satellites became clearer, and there was an immediate impact onto the reduction of pollution. So that's very good. Well, when something is bad, there's also always a good aspect. So you have to just try and do the analysis, and indeed there's a lot of good technology that's going into planes, but it's not just that. It's trying to not use hydrocarbons, trying to find alternative ways, and I really agree with the try to buy local produce, use your bike if you can, share rides. So, and I think everyone is really becoming more and more aware of all of this. So that's great.
Yes. You're right. And it's a good way to look at it too, which is, it is hard when things are negative around us, when there's something bad happening, but there's always a flip side to a coin, right? So there's always but what opportunity does this bring, and what does that teach us for the future? So the things that are happening now should percolate ideas, and also it helps us to rethink how we're doing things and what is sustainable about the way we're doing it, and how can have continued positive impact on our surroundings. So these are all wonderful foods for thought, and I know there's a lovely chat going on with different questions and ideas and things that people are doing at home. Bring all of that together, dive into the next room, hear the next story, and then also see where these questions come alive as well. So with that, I'd like everyone to get comfortable, get ready to travel. We've got another opportunity to propel ourselves into different fields. And so when the message comes on the screen, press go and jump in.
So hello, my name is Bianca, and I wanted to, share with you, I guess, some of the stuff that I would do as in my job as an aerospace engineer. So behind me, you can see some pictures of a real project I've worked on. It was actually the real version of this little model I've got here. Looks like a rocket, not quite though, it's a key difference. It's actually a high-speed engine. So I just spoke about aeroplane engines and how the industry is developing green fuels. And this engine is essentially a very high-speed engine going at about 10,000 kilometers an hour. And I got to do all the analysis on this vehicle here in my job. And then I got to go to the launch, which was pretty amazing. You can see the team behind me as well. And in the team, aerospace engineers are very male dominated. There were 8 engineers, 6 aerospace, yes, 2 electrical. We need the electrical engineers to help us. But of our 6 aerospace engineers, there was just me as the female engineer. So I got to work on that. That was pretty cool. Oh, some chat. Yeah, and that was pretty cool. I got to look at how things get really, really hot when they fly really fast. You can get an appreciation if you rub your hands together really, 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 really fast. And then if you imagine doing that at 10,000 kilometers an hour, which is pretty quick, your hands are going to get really, really hot. And so when they get really, really hot, if that was made out of metal, that metal's going to start to melt and go floppy. And we didn't want a floppy rocket. So I had to do all of the analysis to make sure that it didn't get too hot, that it would melt or lose all of its strength. I also wanted to share, that's one of the really cool projects I've worked on. Another really cool thing that I do is I get to test out a lot of science and physics and my maths, which I do love, in ground test facilities. So this is me during my PhD and last year. And I get to look at really high-speed re-entry type vehicles. So I'm not sure if many of you have been watching, I think it was just last week or the week before, when NASA launched their mission to Mars. So it's going to take 7 months, and then it'll arrive at Mars, and then they'll deposit a little UAV or a remote-controlled helicopter, basically, down onto the ground. And to get into the Mars atmosphere, they're going to be in a vehicle, not quite this, because this is a ground vehicle, but something similar, where they have a vehicle has to go through the atmosphere, and all of this glowing stuff you see here, all of that is really, really, really hot gas. In fact, it's so hot, it can be hotter than the surface of the sun. So it can be pretty hot. And if our little robot is sitting inside this capsule, we don't want it to melt or be destroyed. So that's where I come in. I might do some tests in the ground to see, well, what's that heating, and is it going to get too hot? And it's really fun. You get to make great pictures. Sometimes if you're really lucky, you might get to see an experiment go badly, which you learn a lot from, but it is also quite fun to see. So I guess I want to show you all as my last thing about how did I, oh, sorry, wrong button. How did I get to where I am? So I know this is also brought to you by Girl Guides. Do we have any Girl Guides with us? Yes, hooray. So I was a Girl Guide. This is me as a brownie. I started my Girl Guide journey all the way down at a little brownie, and I went all the way up to my Ranger Guides where I got my Queen's Guide. And what I loved about guides, and I think how it's shaped what I've done, is it allowed me to explore so many different things. So Girl Guides allowed me to explore things like my other things I really enjoy doing is cooking and sewing. I love it. So I got to do that. But then I got to go abseiling, and I got to go snorkeling on the reef, and I got to learn how to fly a plane. I got to do some plane lessons, and I got to learn all these other things that were just so cool. And I think with that, what I did in guides, coupled with that I love maths and science, really set me up to be inquisitive about stuff and want to find things out. And I always want to find out something out on what was going on. So that's what I loved about guides, and there I am, as I said. And so I got to where I am by quite a traditional path. I went straight into, I studied maths at high school, lots of maths and physics at high school, went into university, and then went straight into my PhD. And now I get to work on high-speed vehicles, which is pretty cool. Are there any questions at all? Does anybody like rockets and planes? You can type them in, or you can unmute yourself. There you go.
Bianca, Gypsy, you want to ask a question?
How, like, what kind of high-speed vehicles do you learn about?
Do I learn about? So I focus on what we would call air-breathing engines. So that would be something that takes in air from an atmosphere, so it needs oxygen. So it would look like kind of like a plane, I guess, is what it would look like. And they're very high-speed air-breathing engines, and they can travel great distances in really short amounts of time. That's one type. And then the other type that I really do love, that I work less on, is what we call re-entry vehicles. So those are vehicles that bring people back to a planet like Earth. Recently, we saw the astronauts return from the space station in the SpaceX Dragon module. That's a re-entry vehicle that we might look at as well, where it just enters in. And they're both pretty cool to work on.
Have you ridden, like...
Pardon?
Have you, like, ridden in, like, a really... Have you ridden... No. Have you had a ride in, like, one of them?
No. So the engines I work on at the moment are still kind of experimental, I guess you would say. So they do fly, but they only fly for very short amounts of time. So the fastest plane that I've had a flight in would be either the Airbus, I've forgotten its name, the double-decker Airbus, or the Dreamliner. And they fly at about, it's a really good question, they fly just under the speed of sound, whereas the vehicles I fly, so they fly at about 1,000 kilometers, about, well, it's called 800 kilometers an hour, whereas this vehicle would fly at 10,000 kilometers an hour. A fair bit faster.
Great. I also have a quick question. There's so many amazing things that you're working with every day, but I'm wondering if there is something like in your work that just like keeps surprising you over and over again and really, really motivates you to just keep going and exploring.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much every day you'll find something that you don't know. So, and that's what keeps you going. It's like, oh, I don't know. You might find something just didn't quite work the way you thought it was going to work, or that what I really like is when things break as well, because when they break, you know that you're going to learn a lot of stuff from that. So there's always something that's going to keep me looking for an answer.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Was the Rancourt still the fastest airliner commercial?
The Rancourt is still, the fastest commercial, but there is a lot of research on for 4 times the speed of sound business jets. that might
All
come on
right.
the market in the next 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
I'm going to give a little bit of a talk, but feel free to ask questions. And at the end, I'm also we'll have a few minutes where we can do a Q&A session. Okay. I'm going to share my screen with you now and talk a little bit about my background. So I grew up in England and I joined the Brownies, which is a little bit like the Guides or the Scouts, when I was about 7. And I went on some amazing camping trips. And all those badges on that bit of cloth, they're different kinds of badges you got to sew on your Brownie uniform. And they were mainly for learning new skills and exploring. And I have to say, I got all the nature ones and all the science ones and all the outdoor ones. And for me, I think that was a huge step, because just someone giving you a badge because you went out and you counted 25 frogs or identified 10 different species of trees when you're age 6 or 7 was a real motivator. And it was just something I loved doing. And I got to hang out with my friends and make campfires and toast marshmallows at the same time. So for me, being inquisitive, being outside and learning about the world was also tied up with a lot of good memories. This is a photo taken last year, and I'm going to hold up my hand and say, I think I'm still doing the same stuff as a grown-up. This is Christmas Island. That's me in the background. Christmas Island is an Australian island. You fly north for about 4 hours from Perth. It's one of our most remote coral reef locations. You may have also heard about it because of the crab migration, but they have some of our most stunning coral reefs in the Indian Ocean. It is an incredibly beautiful place to go. And what you can see in the background is I'm swimming along, and in my hands I've got a bag and it's got a tape measure in it. I have an underwater slate so I can write down stuff on it. I also have my underwater camera housing so I can take videos and photograph things. So for me, those are the tools of my trade when I'm doing field work. Christmas Island is also a location of one of Australia's phosphate mines. And I have been working with the local resource managers and the phosphate mine to see if the mining has been having an impact on the coral reefs there. And of course, phosphate, we all use it because farmers put it on their fields and it grows the food we eat. So we are all responsible for the phosphate mining industry. But what we're trying to do is find out better ways to reduce the pollution and runoff onto the coral reefs. So in my hand, you can see I've got a syringe and I'm actually taking a water sample there next to a coral. And we take water samples and sediment samples and then we analyze them for pollution to see what's happening in the water and see how clean the water is. I also bring some of my samples back to the lab at the Australian National University. And I don't know if you know this, but corals are a bit like trees. They put down annual growth bands. And what you can see here is these different bands in the coral. And each one of those bands is the equivalent of 1 year of growth for this particular coral. So you can actually look at how fast the coral is growing, how healthy the bones are, but then you can also use chemistry to analyze what's in the skeleton. And corals, when they grow, record whatever is in the water. That signature gets locked in their coral skeleton. So I can actually trace back pollution histories and climate change histories using coral cores. So I can tell you if pollution's got better or worse on an annual basis, which is a really cool way to help monitor reef health. So this is me. I've just got back from field work. And again, as I was saying, these are my scientific tools I use when I'm doing field work. So I have my wetsuit boots, I have my underwater camera, all my diving gear, and we have a special slate that we can write on underwater. It's a plastic slate and I write on it with a pencil. And that's how I write notes to myself too. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And I should have you all back. We have about 3 minutes. I'm going to invite people to ask questions, to turn off their microphone, introduce your family members if they're there in the background. I'm happy to hear dogs barking, babies crying. Maybe everyone can tell me what country they're in. If you look at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, there's a little microphone button and you will have to unmute it. And if I might, Natalie, do you have a question?
So I'm Nat, but this is Jade who's here today.
Hi.
Hi, I'm from Australia, in Canberra.
Okay. Oh, awesome. I'm in Canberra too. It's raining. I might go around the room then and just quickly ask people to say where they're from and what their favourite science subject is if they don't have a question. And Laura, you're the first person in my screen. Laura, I can't pronounce your surname. Laura Mukherjee?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay.
It's just pronounced how it looks. And actually, my name's Amelia. That's my mum's name on the thing.
Hi, Amelia.
I'm also in Canberra, and I was wondering, what's your favourite marine creature?
Do you know, at the moment, I think I really like octopus or octopi because they're very curious and they're very inquisitive. And I did a really funny dive where my dive buddy kept poking an octopus and the octopus got thoroughly annoyed with my dive buddy and actually tried to pull his diving mask off his face. And I have to admit, I felt quite sorry for the octopus and I thought my dive buddy got what he deserved. So I now have a lot of respect for octopus.
That's awesome.
Okay, the next person I'm going to ask is Rianne Skellums. Do you have anything you'd like to say, Rianne? And where are you?
I'm right here. Now I'm good. My name is Rianne Skellums, as you know, and I live in Canberra. And my favorite area of science is marine biology and chemistry.
Oh, awesome!
Because I love turtles.
Ah, have you seen a turtle?
Yes, actually. 2. Well,
where?
1, technically. In Hawaii, I went scuba diving. Wait, no, not scuba diving, snorkeling. I also saw a pufferfish.
Fabulous.
And I was swimming right above it.
They're pretty awesome to see. And I'm going to say you don't need to scuba dive to see cool things. If you can swim and put a mask on your face or a pair of swimming goggles, you can see heaps as well.
Hello, hi. So I work on satellites, very small satellites. They are called CubeSats. I don't know if you've heard about them. So the size of a CubeSat, I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, so this one here is, it's, the size of my hand. It's just 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. And it's called a 1-unit CubeSat. So you may have heard about these companies deploying thousands of these little CubeSats to try and do internet in space. So the satellites are little devices which are deployed in space and they orbit around the Earth. So we have those which keep circling around the Earth at quite low altitude. And we have the ones which are really, really high at a fixed location. And these are the telecommunication satellites. So when you have, when you play with your phone and you have instant communications with the world, you are using, in fact, the technology that is developed for all of these satellites. And there is a new trend, which is to use the very, very small ones, which are called nano satellites or CubeSats, to do internet of the future in space. But what happens is those little satellites, they don't actually have engines, so you can't really control their trajectory. So they will just orbit and decay and finally burn up in the atmosphere. So in the background shot that you can see behind me, you can see a little light coming off the little engine that we are developing. So this is called a plasma engine. So the light is in fact a plasma. It's like a little stars. So the sun is a really, really hot plasma. It's a very, very hot gas which contains charged particles. So we use a propellant, we create a plasma, and when we eject this plasma from the engine, it creates a force on the satellite, and the satellite can actually move into space.
We just have a question coming in, Christine, from Elizabeth, and she's asking,
yes.
Is it the same as a Starlink?
So what, can I ask her what she means by Starlink?
Elizabeth, can you just unmute yourself maybe for a second and engage a bit in the question? Is that okay for you? Or you can type in chat also if you prefer.
I'm trying to open the chat here.
Elizabeth says, is it the same as a Starlink, the SpaceX internet satellite?
Yes. So Starlink, exactly. Starlink is a group of satellites that's being released gradually or deployed into space to create a connection, an internet connection in space and connect it with us on the ground. Exactly, yeah. But you know, all these little satellites from Starlink, I think they don't have any propulsion engines. They don't have any engines to be able to really steer them. So they are kind of deployed into specific orbits. But gradually they will decay and they won't be able to work anymore. So you have to keep launching new ones. But for the future, we are working on these little engines so that hopefully they can stay up there for a little longer. So what's interesting with those satellites is so this is a little 1 unit module that you can see on the shot there. And you can have different modules, 1 unit, 2, 3, it's a little bit like Lego for space. And there's something else which is also interesting, is that I may have just a little time yet to show you how we test these satellites. In the laboratory here. Okay, here, let's choose this. Okay, you may see this. This is a really, really big cylinder or tank, and it's called a space simulation chamber. So what we need to do is we need to use big pumps to suck the air out so that we can put our satellite in there and test our different satellite systems in space conditions, because in space there's vacuum. And on Earth here, where I'm sitting now, it's not vacuum, I'm breathing air. And for those satellites, it's not where they operate in space. So we need to reproduce space in the laboratory to be able to test those satellites and be satisfied that they will work in space. So this one in particular, it's a bit hard to see, but it's called Wombat Extra Large. So it's our extra large Australian Wombat Space Simulator. So I might go back to, the name's cute. And actually, I'll go back to the other virtual background, because the other little engine, which I was showing you a little while ago, this is called Pocket Rocket, because not the satellite itself, but you can see the engine is actually really, really tiny. It's just about like the size of my 2 fingers, really. So the engine itself, you could actually put it in your pocket, but on this side it's actually attached to the satellite. And for real satellites, you would have the satellite covered by little solar cells and solar panels to give you energy from power from the sun, which will be converted into this plasma and the force onto the satellite. Okay, so it took, I've been working on Pocket Rocket for about, I can see a question here, about 10 years, but really now that we understand how it works, it's very simple. It just takes, you can actually make a little pocket rocket in a few hours in the laboratory. It's the testing which takes a long time, but it's very easy to make. That's why we call it pocket rocket. You just need a little bit of tubing, a little bit of copper, and you need a propellant. And for the propellant, we can use these little, it's hard to see, these little canisters They are the same ones that you use to pump up your bike tires when you have a flat. So what you buy in the shop is really CO2 canister, but we use argon, and that's what we can use as a propellant for pocket rocket. I think we have to move to the room, the main room again. So thank you very much for your question.
We still have another question. We still have a little bit more time, 2 more minutes,
Yes.
and everybody doesn't have to do anything. When the pop-up occurs, we will travel automatically. And the next question is, don't do anything, we will travel automatically. So the next question is, how do you get them into space? And are you the inventor of the pocket rocket?
Yes, I'm the inventor with the pocket rocket, along with another colleague in the laboratory. And because the force is really, really tiny, what we have to do is we have to use chemical rocket to bring these up into space first, and then they are deployed once the rocket is in orbit, if you want. So we can't just throw them up. We just have to put this in a capsule on the top of a rocket, then we launch the rocket with chemical engines. And once this is in orbit, these are released by using a little spring, and they're just ejected into orbit. And then they will start circling around the Earth on a low Earth orbit.
Amazing, thank you.
I know that we could continue to ask questions all day long. But what we're going to do instead is I'm going to have a final question for you in just a moment for all of our speakers. But before we do, what I'd like to do is I'd like to get a chance to have an experiment and see something hands-on that we can get inspiration from. It's one thing that, of course, we love doing at Greenlight for Girls, and it's something that some of you already mentioned, which was a key part of figuring out what you wanted to do along the way, or how you might want to change your career or go to different fields. You have to kind of get your hands into things. You've got to try it out. It's not just something you read about, you've got to try it. And with all these great examples of what's coming up in the chat room about the things we're doing in our own communities related to helping with climate change, helping with bringing the environmental impact down, and all the things we're doing, it's all hands-on, right? So that's part of the lovely thing of being able to also dive into experiments. Our G4G team loves to do this. So let's hear what they've come up with.
If you ask any of us at G4G what we think of when we hear the word exploration, you would probably get curiosity, innovation, invention, and of course, we would think of science. STEM helps us explore the world around us and better understand everything that we experience. Why is the sky blue? Why are the oceans so deep? What is needed for us to go even further in space travel? And so today, the Earth's elements, like ice and water, and even the physics that keep us rooted safely in the ground, are our inspiration. And we love to see how we can experiment in the smallest of everyday things. So, let's get experimenting. The bottle is actually full of hot air after you add hot water. We know from thermal expansion that air molecules expand when hot and shrink when cool. So when we close the lid on this hot bottle and it cools as it is inverted in cold water, we create a pressure that forces the water right up the straw. Pretty cool, huh? What you've seen is a super saturated solution. Using vinegar, baking soda, and water, we created sodium acetate trihydrates. This solution has an ability to go from liquid to solid really quickly, all while creating an exothermic reaction. And we can cool it beyond its freezing point and it still stays liquid. So it just takes one small crystal or agitation to turn it solid. Cool, right?
Hi, my name is Maya and I'm coming to you from Massachusetts in the United States. In addition to being my class valedictorian, I am also a visual artist, a music and film producer. In fact, I'm producing the very video that you're watching right now. And I'm a circus performer. Science is all around us, and I use physics every day in my circus training. Physics helps explain how objects spin, move, stay at rest, or in my case, how hula hoops can seemingly defy gravity. I could talk about it more, but I think it's best if I show you.
The basics are pushing and pulling. By pushing the hula hoop forward in time with the period of the rotation, I keep it spinning. Friction, torque, and weight are all at play here. When I move against gravity, I must always be aware of my hoop and the force that I need to apply. When I'm balancing, I have to be aware of the center of gravity and the force that I'm exerting against the ground. Torque is the force needed to cause an object to rotate around an axis, in this case my arms and legs. I am constantly moving my body to keep the hoop in steady motion and maintain the centripetal force. The weight of the hoop makes a difference, as the heavier the hoop, the more force needs to be applied to keep it going. Beginner hula hoopers often start with a heavier hoop because it moves slower but will hold its momentum for longer. The lighter the hoop, the less force you need to make it move, but you need to move fast so it doesn't fall. It's important to note that conservation of angular momentum plays an important role here. This law states that when an object is in rotation, momentum will be conserved as long as there is no net external torque. This is what allows me to keep up all 6 of these hula hoops.
Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on the next episode of Science You Had Me at Hello.
Amazingly inspiring as always, and thank you to our intern Maya for putting this together and also showing her amazing skills and connecting it to science. So I'm hopeful that, and I'm sure that I am not the only one inspired here, but our speakers as well, and I'm sure it also connects to a lot of the things that we either study or we do every day. And I hope that gives also a bit of inspiration to everybody online as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask that last question to each of our speakers, and we're going to do one final thing before we go afterwards. So I will cue you up when this happens, but I'm actually going to bring everybody online so that we can say a final goodbye. But before we do, I have a question for you. We've got a chance to hear a bit about your story. There's so much more we could know, but if you were to think about those last words of wisdom for our participants that are there, for the ones who are going to watch us afterwards, something that also connects to the future, where you'd like to see, last things that you want to bring forward, this is the time. So I'm going to go around the room and I'm going to start with Bianca. So Bianca, if you wouldn't mind.
So my wishes for the world of girls in STEM. I would like to see all girls everywhere empowered to become whatever they want to be. And hopefully that's an aerospace engineer. But if it's not, that's also cool. And I would love them to be able to have easily accessible to all of them, the role models, the support, the mentors, the all those people that would encourage and inspire people and help anybody dream whatever dream they want to be.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Bianca. Great words. Amrita, I'm going to turn this over to you. What do you have for us?
Yeah, I think, so I just want to say that science, technology, and engineering, mathematics, STEM, these are not subjects. And to everyone that's here today, these are ways of thinking about our world, about ways of understanding the world we live in and explaining it and helping others to understand it as well. Choosing to work as a STEM professional doesn't narrow your options. It broadens them beyond what you can ever imagine. And the last thing, I said it to everyone that was in the rooms with me, but I will say it here. In a couple of years, I want to be on the other side of this broadcast, listening to cool stories from everyone that's in the room today. So thank you.
That's a great. And I think especially what you mentioned too about the fact that STEM is not a subject. This is something we need to get this out, right? So we need to make sure that people understand this. This is wonderful. It gives us great inspiration. Jenny, what words do you have for us today?
I would really like to see a lot more women in STEM. I want to see a greater diversity of role models, leaders. We're getting there. About 1/5 of all scientists are women, but we need an awful lot more. And I would love to see some of the girls that join us today out there helping solve some of our planet's problems and making the world a better place. So my wish is for everyone just to go for it and do awesome things in science.
I love it. And I think based on the chat that's going on and the support with each other, I think that's definitely going to come true. And it's certainly something that started G4G to begin with, which is to make a difference in those numbers. So we all need to work together, which is wonderful. Christine, what words would you have for us?
For me, science is just a way of life. It's just gives you a balance in life, and I'm having fun every day. I don't think I will ever be bored, because now I'm learning from my students. I'm learning about the new technologies. It's always fun. So I think it's just about a journey on planet Earth for each individual. And it's about your contributions and your interactions. It doesn't matter which field, but if you have a scientific background, it really opens all the doors that you can imagine. It's like, to me, it's just a perfect support. And then you just will feel free, and you can dream and feel free, be independent. It's just you're in charge of your own life and your contributions to planet Earth. So that's my message.
It's a great message. Thank you so much. And Shelley.
Thanks, Melissa. Look, I've got a prop. I hope it's going to come up.
I can see.
No, I don't think it is. I'm going to say it. So I think to round this all up and bring it home, I want to just say to everybody online that the future belongs to the curious. It belongs to the ones who aren't afraid to explore, to pick up every rock, to ask what's under it and why, weigh the rock, to poke the rock, to question the rock, and to turn everything inside out so that you can fully understand it and question it, and then you can pioneer and reinvent it and turn it into a whole bunch of other new stuff. And I think the most important theme that I've heard from everybody today is to make this place a better world, is to have a positive impact and a purposeful impact on this planet. So be curious. The world is your future, and make a big footprint on it that is going to make this world a better place.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. It's amazing. Amazing that you took this time today, which also gives us great ideas for the future of what everyone can do. So it's great. I see one person's put their video on. Now let's all do it, because I think this is the great way of ending. So everybody put your video on. We want to see everyone, wherever you are. It's so great to see everyone. It's like we're right in front of you, or the next best opportunity to be there. So more. I know there's a lot of you out there. And we're going to do a wave in a moment and a goodbye. Let me just get some more people there. And it's great to see the faces behind all of these great messages going on our chat. I love all of your questions, and I love all of your ways that you're already looking to the future and doing things today, which has been amazing. All right. Let's do a great wave to everyone, because this is going online and this is part of National Science Week, ACT. It's wonderful to be here from all around the world, but all together in Australia. So thank you everyone for being part of this fabulous Science You Had Me at Hello, and keep being the inspirational people that you are. Thank you.